Roll call. Essen. Here. Fisher.
Here.
Ward. Here. Knopfinger.
Here.
Seaman. Here. McNabb.
Here.
Butler.
Here.
All right, do we have members of the student council to lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, do you want to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what student council is doing?
I'm Ivy Lurch. I'm Ellie Hubler. I'm Kate Christian. And for homecoming, we sold a little under 1,000 tickets, and our decorations were really well put together this year. We got a lot of compliments on those. So yeah, and then we're working on Boo Bash right now, like what games to do and like decorations and things for that too. So.
And we're also trying to think of some winter fundraising ideas.
When is Boo Bash this year?
It's October 30th, I think.
Okay. And 1,000 people, that has to be one of the bigger homecoming turnouts, you think?
Yeah.
All right, good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We apologize for the weather.
All right, visitors and correspondence, we're going to start with the recipients of letter of commendation for the National Merit Scholarship Awards. If you want to come up here, and we'll hand out the awards. You want to introduce everybody?
I'm right here.
All right, we're going to go in, I got them in order here, so I don't know. We have Brady?
Yep.
All right, congratulations, good job. And I don't think Josh is Madden.
He's not here.
Madson's here. All right, Kinsey, Maya, congratulations. Edward Andrews, congratulations.
Thanks.
And Jacob Boyer, congratulations. Thank you. Good job, you guys. Pretty big deal.
There we go.
So we have a question. What do you have to do to get this letter?
It was top 50,000 of 1.6 million, right?
Wow.
Based on your test scores,
Yeah,
right?
there's an index you're given based on.
Yeah, it also depends on your state.
Okay.
So, yeah, if we were in Wyoming, we might have got further.
Isn't that like the top 2 or 3% though, right?
Something like that.
3%.
Very well. Right. All right. Great job. Thank you.
Great job.
All right. Do you have any other visitors and correspondence? Have any other visitors and correspondence? We're going to go to number 5, reports. Our audit report from Cook Consultants.
Okay, he is coming up from Lincoln, and so he should be here anytime, so we'll just kind of keep pushing him down in the reports. Hopefully we can fill enough time in between now and then.
Okay. All right. Next report, 5.2, library grant from Tom Gross.
Oh, well, I don't think I'll have any trouble giving him time. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All right. Well, good evening. It's good to see everybody tonight. As tradition, I'm here to speak in October because I've submitted the Illinois State Library School District Library Grant application, and you have that in your board book. And so it is it's become increasingly easier to fill out over the years. They've simplified it. And so you have that. And then in association with that, I also am required to submit in the second document that you have in there is the expenditure report, how I spent that grant in the past, and for this particular case, it was for fiscal year 2018. And since I've been librarian here at Washington High School, I've been spending the state library grant on ebooks for research. It's in a particular portfolio called the Gale Virtual Reference Library. And so these are ebooks that we keep. They are not a subscription service or anything like that. It's just like purchasing books and putting them on our shelves, except the benefit to the students is they are accessible 24/7. And so two areas that I am building currently right now, one is based upon a very specific project that I've been working on with the science department. So I'm using, I will plan to use last year's funds to purchase books for the biology classes, advanced biology and specifics. And then the remaining amount of money that I'll be using there is to build up our social-emotional ebooks for our counselors to use, for our students to use for research, and also promote that for just individual student use as well, for those students that are feeling that they need some extra support in that. And also, along with the grant, I have to fill out the Internet Interlibrary Loan and Reciprocal Borrowing Statistical Survey, which is data that we collect throughout the entire year to demonstrate that we play with other libraries in the state, that we share books with other libraries, and then we also reciprocate and bring in books from other libraries for our students to use, which actually, through promotion of that service, we have a number of students that are ordering books from other schools and other public libraries, and so that's a great way to share those resources. It saves us money because if it's a one-time use or a use that is maybe something that we wouldn't ordinarily have here, those students are able to still access that information. So I usually take this time also to give you a report about the library, and so if I could take about 5 or so minutes to do that. I spent quite a bit of time last year visiting and talking to you about the library, so I will keep it brief this year. But I did want to mention that I continue to support classrooms as I have in the past, and I mentioned the Science Advanced Biology class. That is a research class that I've been up and to talk to them about researching for their data in preparation for a field trip and a collaboration that they have with Forest Park Nature Center. And so we worked on research together, and I assisted with that project. And then we went on the field trip out to Forest Park, and I assisted and helped the students with data collection out there, as well as working on some forest restoration out there. And it's working with Sean Kerwin on this particular project, and so it's going to be an ongoing project, which is again why I'm buying those materials in our ebook collection. Other departments that I've worked with this year so far are departments and classes. I've worked with the math department this year. I've worked specifically with European history, a number of English classes, been in their classes working with different projects, mostly with research. And I am also working on a new project with our new consumer science teacher, Mrs. McLaughlin, on a literary project. And so I'm excited for that to continue to develop and be able to share that with you next year. I do continue to represent WCHS in other areas than just as librarian, both within the school and outside of the school. I was just recently, this last weekend, a presenter at the Association of Illinois School Library Educators and the English Teachers of Illinois Conference. I sit on two ISLE, that's the Association of Illinois School Library Educators. I sit on two task force committees with them. I'm also on the ICC Library Technical Assistance Advisory Board. Within the school, I continue as the district project CRIS trainer, and I am on the insurance committee and the technology committee here at the district within the school as well. I've been working on over the past few years, and I've mentioned a couple times to this body that a couple of school events that I continue to work on and have worked on in the past. One in particular that I don't think I've mentioned here before is in collaboration with Dr. Sander, Russell Cycling and Fitness, Laura McCune, and the cafeteria, and a host of WCHS staff have organized the Bike to School Day in May the last 2 years, and we'll continue to do that again this year. And it's a great a way to promote physical fitness, alternate transportation methods, and just a good time coming to school. I've had a number of students mention to me how much more awake they are and alert they are in the first hour class. So I see the benefit there, and I just keep telling them, hey, just keep riding your bike to school and keep that up. And then if you have maybe missed or have been wondering what happened to Star Wars Reads Day in October, it's still going to be around, just not in October this year. Through some brainstorming and if looking for ways to increase our impact on that, we thought, it's pretty darn nice outside still in October, so let's put it in a month where it's not so nice outside and people are looking for things to do indoors. So we moved Star Wars Day to January 11th, so be looking for announcements on that. And I'm really trying to bolster some of our guests and some activities to really encourage not just the little kids to be coming, but also our high school students. So I'm really targeting them, our own high school students, in that event this year. Wanted to mention, as in the past, our book club is staying strong. That is a library club that meets after school. We are averaging nearly 20 students and staff members at each meeting with an active roster of over 50 students on the book club. And again, their big activity is the Star Wars Reads Day event, but we meet about once every 5 to 6 weeks. We discuss a book that everyone has gotten, and we read the book together, and then we come here and we discuss it. So it's a pretty typical book club, but we try to keep it vibrant. We also, with book club, continue that into the summer with our Read-A-Palooza program as well. Our tabletop gaming club is a club that continues, I've mentioned it here before, but continues to grow just incredibly. In fact, I did an entire session at the library conference this last week to talk about the successes of our tabletop club. Started as 16 students 6 years ago, and this year our roster includes over 70 students and staff. Last year our attendance numbers were off the charts compared to previous years. We had 356 attendance numbers and between students and staff, over 20 meetings, which averages about 18 students per year. Now, just to give you an idea where we are this year, we've got about 5 meetings under our belt. We've got about 30 students coming to each meeting for Game Club. So that's a club that is really growing. It reaches a big variety of students. And just to give you an idea that is a club that also, the students ask for this, we reach out to the community. So we did 2 community game days over at the public library last year. We collaborated with Advocates for Awareness and did a game club, game meeting here on a Saturday afternoon with our life skills students. And we just had a ball. We had a great time. And the students just keep coming back for that. And so I could not do Game Club and I just want to mention our volunteer staff members that help out. I have about 3 volunteer staff members. And this year I have an alumnus come back to help us out with Game Club. So if it weren't for them and my awesome student leaders, this club would not succeed and have the numbers it does. So with all that said, the library continues to support students and staff through traditional means by offering lots of options for reading for enjoyment, as well as the many resources, both print and digital. Thanks to your support, I'm able to keep that, serve both those services through books and digital services coming to the students. But we continue to look for ways to collaborate with the community and to help all students make connections at WCHS. Thank you.
I had a couple questions.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
First, I'm glad that Star Wars is still going to be happening in January, because I was looking for it in October, and I'm like, uh-oh, that's not good.
Yeah,
But
no,
it's better-
we're still got it, yep.
And then, secondly, your tabletop games.
Yes.
Do you think it has anything to do with kids being bored with electronics on their own? They want to have that connectivity with tabletop games that they haven't probably played?
I don't know. I haven't really made any correlation to the electronic games and like video gaming in that. But I know the one thing that seems to really draw them is that connection, face-to-face connection. And that is one of the benefits of those tabletop games, whether it's a board game, a card game, a role-playing game, or we started this year miniature war games. And so I do think that they really are desiring that connection with other students. And so that's what I see. I see a lot of students come together that you wouldn't see down in the cafeteria or hanging out before or after school. But here they are in game club, no questions asked. I'm playing that game, doesn't matter who's playing. So I really think it builds that, definitely builds that social aspect.
I was thinking too, we ordinarily think of books being academic in a library that you would order. And when you mentioned books on social emotional issues, more and more I'm reading about colleges and universities having to face those issues with their students at that age level. And certainly we do at this age level. And we have resources here of people, but how nice to have books where students may not want to go to a person, but want to get a solitary source to look at and read. And I just think that to see that being looked at through so many different ways is very wise.
And my hope is that with those materials and resources that it teaches students that independence to seek out information on their own, use the human resources that they have and those connections, like our counselors and staff and those folks, parents, but also reach out independently to get that information themselves. So yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for contributing so much to, I mean, a lot of what you do is above and beyond the Call of Duty, but it really adds a lot of dynamism to the environment, so thank you very much.
Oh, absolutely. It's my pleasure, and I think that our youth in this community are just, a great resource, and any way that I can support them, I'm going to do that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, do we have our
Yes, we
audit
do.
report now?
Matt, you're up. And all the board members have a copy of the financial statements. The AFR and an electronic copy of the financial statements have been loaded on our website as well. Matt, turn it on over to you.
Good evening. Sorry I'm a little bit late. I had another meeting to go to. I am Matt Cook. I'm with Cook Consultants, and we audited the district's 6/30/2019 financial statements, so the year ended June 30th. You have multiple reports. You have probably two in front of you. There's really three reports. There's a AFR that is on the Illinois State Board of Education forms. It's kind of an ugly, big document. I believe you'll get that one electronically, or that's the one Joe mentioned, or Dr. Sander mentioned is available to the public online. Then you have most likely the clean version, or a little prettier version of that, which is not in the Illinois State Board of Education form. It's a little cleaner. It doesn't have a lot of the extra garbage in it. And then there's also a letter from us, the auditors, to you, the board, of some required communications. So, like I said, we did audit the financial statements, and just a quick background for those of you who may not be familiar. The purpose of an audit is to provide the public or the financial statement users with reasonable assurance that the financial statements prepared by administration are free of material misstatement. So we have an audit opinion in the front of those that basically says that. Your financial statements are on the regulatory basis of accounting, which is prescribed by the Illinois State Board of Education. It's not a generally accepted accounting principles presentation, but instead following basically the school code. So as part of our audit, we did recommend a few reclassifications of some revenue and expenditure accounts, but nothing we proposed really changed financial information that you had previously seen. I know Dr. Sander goes over some of that in depth with you, and probably still will go over some of this, even this 2019 information with you. So I'm not going to go into the financial statements really at all. I will point out there is a financial profile score. It's the only thing in the AFR that's really a benchmark. They use that for a lot of benchmarking, but the financial profile score is basically used by the Illinois State Board of Education to make sure you're not in financial duress. Your score is 3.8 out of 4, which is very high. I think that's basically what you were last year, but at least by that metric and by most metrics, you're very you've got a strong balance sheet, and I think you're aware of that. So just a couple other items, housekeeping from the auditor standpoint. First of all, buried in the AFR report, that's the regulatory report, so maybe not the one you have in front of you, but that is available electronically, are two items which we would call findings. The first one will sound familiar if you've been here before, and that is a significant deficiency. A significant deficiency sounds really bad, but all that is when we see a control deficiency that we believe needs to be brought to your attention, we bring it to your attention, but we call it a significant deficiency because that's what they call it in accounting. And that is the lack of ideal segregation of duties over accounting duties. Basically, in an ideal environment, things like the custody of your funds, the authorization to spend those funds, the ability to write the check to spend those funds, the reconciliation of all that, or the collection of that, or the recording, or any of that stuff would be segregated amongst multiple people, and no single individual would be able to control multiple aspects of that process. You are a smaller organization, so particularly in your accounts outside of the main bank account or places where cash is collected, you have that situation where there are some risks related to single individuals having access that's not ideal. Part of that is just business necessity. Even on the main account, there are occasions where people have extra access just out of business necessity. You know, somebody's absent, sick, on vacation, business needs to happen, so they have that access. They don't necessarily always use that access, but they have the ability, which allows them to override controls. And if you ever do read the finding itself and then compare it to last year's finding, there is a change in the finding this year where last year, what we added this year was there was some turnover in the finance department, and during that time, some of the controls that had been put in place to mitigate some of these risks I'm talking about basically were put on hiatus and didn't get reestablished for a while. So there was a period there during turnover and following that where some of the previous controls set up based on our audit a few years ago just were not operating for a while. Those have been reestablished. So that's a little different, just a little piece in that finding if you do compare them to prior years, which I'm sure you all will tonight. I know you won't. The second finding is a new one, and Dr. Sander has these pulled up. This is a compliance finding. I hate doing this one, but it's technically non-compliance, and that is several of your funds, as you can see here, were over budget, so we point that out. You know, your education fund there, the big one, is like $175,000 over budget. That's 1.2% over budget. So in most places, if you had a budget and you got within 1.2%, you'd pat yourself on the back and say, hey, we know what we're doing. We planned that pretty well. Unfortunately, in local government, that's not how it works. You go $1 over and you're non-compliant. So the more unfortunate thing is a lot of school districts or other local governments, to avoid doing that, just pad their budget unnecessarily so that they never go over. It's kind of a double-edged sword, but yeah, so we do point that out, that several of your funds were significantly over budget and consider a finding. That's really all I have to report. Like I said, I encourage you to read all those letters and all the fun stuff in there, because it is stuff we're supposed to communicate to you, the board, and the public. So, does anybody have any questions? I always, you know, we deal with administration, but really we're public accountants. The idea is that we work for you, the board, or the public in general. So, you know, if you ever have questions, or I confused you while I was up here, you have questions about the finding or any of that, yeah, you're welcome to give us a call. Call the number on the letterhead or whatever, and I'm glad to talk to you. I'll also answer any questions now. Go ahead.
Matt, on the segregation of duties, is that an issue you see at other school districts of similar size with similar staffing shortages?
Yeah, certainly. The issue with this is it's one of those things where we bring it, there's also another level of finding we didn't talk about, which is a higher level where it's a material weakness, which we do not consider this to be a material weakness. We just consider it significant enough to bring to your attention. And that's because, particularly at a high school district, there are just a lot of things going on financially. I mean, people are collecting fees for activity funds all over the place. You're doing trips, and there's a lot of weird things going on. And I think it's important to keep you guys and remind you guys that, hey, there's some risk there. And then there is some risk, again, in that main account, too. Not as much, but certainly is there. So we just bring that to your attention because we feel that it's important that you recognize that risk. But yeah, certainly, anytime you get into activity funds especially, I don't know anybody that has that locked down. Whether their auditors call it a significant deficiency, it's up to them.
As far as the activity funds, I saw in the findings that you don't audit the activity funds. What details what would be used for a student activity fund?
Where did it say we didn't audit the activity funds?
I think in the draft that I got sent, it said that it wasn't audited. Maybe I misread that, but it mentioned something specifically
I think,
about
okay,
the activity fund.
maybe there's an activity fund schedule that is not part of the basic financial statements.
Okay.
But I think if you read further, it should read that while it's not part of the basic financial statements, we have applied the same procedures to it.
Okay.
I'm hoping that's what it reads, because your activity funds are part of the audit.
Okay. Okay.
So
that's what.
So I just want to be, yeah.
It
So
kind of
activity
concerned me.
funds.
I thought, well, maybe that's not standard practice for
No.
those accounts,
So-
because they're not large accounts or something of that, but
Yeah.
I
And-
might have misread it also, so that could be,
Right.
but what details going into an activity fund?
What are your activity funds, or
No,
what?
I mean, like, what would you use an activity fund versus educational fund?
Well, your activity funds are, I mean, you've got a bunch of them. So that's anything from like, I'm trying to think what you guys have.
Scholarships, we have
You-
all of
you-
our student scholarships, all the clubs and activities that's there, wherever they do their fundraising.
I mean, everybody from the, like, you think you have a student newspaper to the Pantherettes and cheerleaders, they all have each cross-country team. I mean, everybody's got an activity fund. And the idea is that,
They're like the athletic funds and clubs.
yeah. So, yeah, it's basically the student-led activities a lot of times, or in the case, you also have scholarships in there, as you mentioned, that are outside of the ed fund. So, but yeah, so hopefully it's clear. First of all, the way the opinions work for school district financial statements, that's our audit opinion. They're like 3 or 4 pages long. They're atrocious to follow. So I could see how you could easily be confused, because there's a lot of stuff, particularly in the ISB schedules, that is just calculated by the ISB form, and we take no responsibility for that, so we have a big list of all that stuff in there. So then it gets confusing about what we're actually auditing and what we're not. So I can see that.
Thank you.
I had a question. So for activities or groups that move money through the activity fund and kind of, utilize the high school's financial system to run the money through it. Like the student club's pretty clear. But I was on a board, and I think it was an organization, something like the PTO, was running money through kind of, and we were told by the auditor that they shouldn't do that, and we had to have them separate out. Does that sound about right?
Well, cameras on it.
And I guess where I'm going is I'm just wondering, like, what
No, there are qualifications for an activity fund. There are certainly activity funds, student activity funds, that in many districts don't technically meet the definition of student activity funds, but are pretty much accepted as being okay. The PTO gets a little dicey sometimes, because it's hard to tell. It really comes down to who's in control of that money and how it's being spent. Because there's certainly purposes within a PTO that would be acceptable, but once it's in the activity fund, it's kind of the district's money, even though it's student activity money, so that might be something.
And so it's a rule that if the activity is running the money, is making money and processing it through the school, that it becomes the school's money? Or is it separate then? I mean,
it's. Now you're getting me into legal questions. I'm not 100% sure.
and I mean,
but my understanding, like it is the board. the board's responsibility to establish activity funds, to close activity funds, and to redirect monies in activity funds that are no longer used. So the ultimate authority, I think, on those ultimately lies with the board. In fact, there's some new accounting standards coming down, and the Illinois State Board of Education is unsure of how to handle the activity funds under the new accounting standards. And there's talk that it will actually end up in your ed fund next year, the activity funds themselves, if you want to get into it. That kind of, again, I'm not a lawyer though, so I don't know the legalese of it. But right now, the way ISB is looking at it, there's a good chance next year when I report on these, it'll be part of your ed fund.
Okay, and so I pushed the boundaries of your knowledge here, or what you're comfortable with. But my next question, I think it's my last, is where does the board's liability come in when because essentially we're allowing activities to run the money through the school's financial system. So where does the board become liable if one of those entities mismanages money?
Well, I don't know about, liability isn't my expertise, but I mean the idea is that the system it controls over those monies, I believe it lies with the district. I mean, district employees are managing those funds. Now, if somebody's taking them before you ever get them, that I don't know where that would fall. That's all legal issues. But it's the district has appointed a treasurer basically over the activity funds, separate from your actual treasurer.
So we're responsible with the money once we get it. Obviously, we can't control whether or not it gets to us.
Yeah.
And the definition, I mean, what qualifies as an activity fund is something that benefits our students. Is that correct?
I don't have the exact definition in front of me.
I mean,
yes, I mean that's the idea.
It's benefiting our students.
That's the idea. Is it's supposed to be a student-led organization, and I don't know if "led" is the right word there though.
But I mean,
so
just a broad.
But
idea,
there,
as long as it's benefiting our students.
Yeah. So,
like a scholarship.
Right. Yeah, and so it is possible that there will be some more clarification from ISB on. It's possible things like the scholarships will stay outside of the ed fund, but the true activity funds come inside. That's yet to be seen. So, and I don't know how that's going to go. My last IASBO training was in June, and they were still not sure. So,
these are good questions, and the more we ask questions, the better informed we are as board members, because we are sitting here in a very judgmental and evaluated position. However, in the end, I am proud of where we are with this score, and we're just about one of the biggest businesses in the community. When I think of our personnel, our budget, we're a big deal in a community our size, and obviously we handle a lot of money, taxpayers' money, state money, federal money. So I think the board's position is balanced budget as much as possible and realistic. And secondly, to be good stewards in making sure that it's spent in the very best ways and they're just good stewards. So based on the finance committee here and Joe, who is the head honcho for our money, I really want to congratulate them on their planning and their oversight and the board's being conservative and careful about how we spend the money.
any more questions? I'd be glad to answer them, even if they're the fringe of my knowledge, which doesn't take very much to get there, trust me.
Yeah, you can't fool us. Anybody who can make this report knows quite a bit.
Yeah. So.
All right.
All right.
No more questions. Thank you.
Yep. Is that everything? You're good. All right. Yes.
You
Have a
stick
great
around
evening.
if you'd like.
No. I
We ask all our friends that.
Okay, on to 5.3, the Dean's Report.
You have a copy of that in the report?
Next, 5.4, Enrollment Report.
As you can see, we're still holding at about 1,400 students, so it's been pretty level this year so far in a month and a half. Because that's basically September and August.
Yeah.
All right. 5.5, the Financial Report. Dr. Sanders?
Okay, so since we're in the second quarter of the year, I've loaded in here your expense report, and a good rule of thumb on the expenses is we should be about 25% because we're a quarter into the school year. And so total expense is about 26%. Keep in mind that our transportation expense is front-loaded to pay for all of our leasing of our buses, which is a large amount, for the fleet. And so that hits in July and August. Okay. And then some of the other reports, the revenue report, this one is the exact opposite. We have received quite a bit of our revenue, as indicated, by the different, general levy. You can see that we received 92%, and then all the other different portions. So like state aid, that's going to trickle in throughout the entire fiscal year. Okay, so that one is, it's looking where it should look. And so total revenue received is just over 60%. And then we had an insurance committee meeting, but we didn't have enough for a quorum, so I just kind of covered all the information. And that was this information listed here, as you can see it. It's been a roller coaster of a year. Some months have been rather low in our expenses, and some months have been rather high. And so hopefully this equalizes or flattens out as we get through the end of the calendar year. And then you can see the comparative to where we were last year in this report. And the investment report really doesn't change too much. We're still sitting with $6.6 million in investments. Keep in mind we have $1 million here that is dedicated towards the project that we'll be spending that down relatively soon as we try to close out, and get to the 95th% of a project before it get the last 5%. So we hope that we can get that spent out.
One thing on the insurance.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed that dental and vision are down.
Mm-hmm.
Pharmacy too, understandable. But
Right.
teachers, please make sure you keep one of those things for yourselves and your kids.
Yeah. I say that all the time out the base. Is
There you
make
go.
sure you get
I think that's
checked.
really important.
Right. Also, I do want to take a moment because there were some questions that came on up about activity funds. So out on our website here, and I'll just walk you through it. So if you go out to our website and go down to the bids, contracts, and reporting documents, this comes on up. And if you go to this fiscal year, you will see this is where the AFR is loaded, where I put that. The AFR, the other communication piece, and then the financial statements are all loaded there. But I also want to point out in our staff-only resources, underneath, I think it's WCHS info, and the business office, we have these different items over here on the right, managing student activity fund accounts. So I put together this, it's about maybe 15 pages, about 10 pages. And this is everything that someone needs to know about managing the activity accounts. And so I put it in black and white. It lists what accounts can be used for, how the funds should be raised, the accounting of all those funds. So it's just a nice little how-to guide on that. Also listed there are the things that we have to report out on now. We have to have a fraud, waste, and abuse guide. And that's what I think, to kind of reiterate what Matt was talking about, for a high school only district, this place never sleeps. We're collecting money for about everything. I mean, we had a volleyball game tonight, so we have black and white procedures on how funds are collected, and they have to be deposited, they have to be counted by someone else. But in a lot of schools, the level of accountability, there isn't the segregation of duties and responsibilities. Bigger schools that have more departments, maybe an accounts payable and accounts receivable department, they're able to segregate their duties. But, we have an office with a bookkeeper and 2 assistants, and then Lisa Roberts manages the activity fund. We don't have anyone else to, to do the clerical oversight of the activity accounts. And so we try to put things in black and white. We try to establish some procedures, and we try to follow those procedures. Dr. Freeman and I hardly ever, maybe less than 0.01%, do we allow our signatures to be stamped on the checks. We hand sign everything. That means that there's an accountability coming through with all of that. So if any of you have questions, want to see something more in detail, feel free. He gets hit with those questions, and I know he's an auditor, but he really, he asks the questions about our processes and procedures and how we have to report out on that. But when you have a single person that's doing payroll, it's hard to have a, check and balance for that person. So we do have a process where I provide the check and balance. So it's there. It's not bulletproof, but then again, most schools aren't bulletproof either. So
I think you made that point too, that in a small organization, it's just very difficult, limited resources.
It is. People. It is. It is a difficult thing to do. So.
All right. Any questions? All right. On to 5.6 board committee reports.
We had a facilities meeting. The old band room is now one huge big room for right now. However, there have been some complications with old type of construction, I believe, to be a nice word to say it. And we are going to run into spending more on a beam there that has to be done outside of school time.
Is that in the original 1940s?
It's in the
60,
old, yeah.
63, I think 63, 62.
And there's a weight-bearing wall up there that's partially demoed, that needs to be partially demoed, and they had to put some support above it so they could still maintain the ceiling. And so what they have to do is bring in floor jacks and put them both on the second floor and then directly below them on the first floor to hold everything in place while they readjust and put that beam in. Once it's set, then everything will be fine. They don't believe it'll take a tremendous amount of time, but it's not something they can do while kids are present because they have to put those floor jacks in classrooms. And so that's where some of the bigger expense came from. The other thing that was up there is HVAC, because they have to reroute it to adjust to the compartmentalized look of the new classrooms that we're putting in up there.
And then one thing that did also come up is the timeline had changed, and they were going to have it done before December, but now it's pushing into January, February time. And so the premium time might have been listed on the chart, and we weren't sure if that was correctly, and we really needed that premium time. We discussed that after the meeting, and so we just wait to hear back from some of the findings.
Well, the premium time, the only premium time they're talking about now is for the jack work and to get that being set.
Yeah, they didn't have that broken down, so I wasn't aware of what that, I didn't want them coming in and working in the evenings if we're not needing the rooms before next semester. And then as far as the rooms design, we could see some prints on those and to share, I guess.
You did see some prints?
Not yet.
Well,
They showed us the
have
meeting.
seen them. They've been out before in facility committee meetings. We can pull them back out. It's simply 4 classrooms. To really just lay it out, that's what it is. So.
Was one of the classrooms going to be uniquely configured to accommodate newspaper and yearbook?
To some degree, yes. It's going to have some space in it. Here's what's happening right now. Our newspaper and yearbook are sitting in the general classroom, and so they're taking up a tremendous amount of space in the classroom. We have talked to both of those teachers. They're very excited about moving them to the second floor because they want to reclaim that space in their classroom. So that they're only teaching a section of that a day versus the other 5 hours that they're teaching in those classes. They want that space for the mass of students that come through. So in those conversations, that's what we have found out. They do want to move, because it involves a lot of wired-in computer stations.
Right.
They want to move those upstairs and have them up in that new location.
So there'll be a media kind of room
Yes.
with those Macs, because they use Macs for that, and there's software that lives on those Macs that's required. And then, but then how does that work if a student wants to use that? I guess I just want to make sure it's functional if we're building it in, you know?
Sure. And good question. And the answer is that you're dealing with, in the case of journalism and in yearbook, they're both a class and an extracurricular. So there is time built in after the day where they will be available to go out there. We've talked about the fact that they can also use Chromebooks because the technology is all web-based now to some degree. So Chromebooks can be used anywhere in the school at any time. And we even discussed the potential of being able to put 1 or 2 stations in 1 or 2 of the classrooms in case they need that Mac in order to do some work during the day when they're available. So I think there are ways to do what I believe you're asking.
Yeah, and then the other question I had, so it's going to be kind of wired and those Macs are going to live in that room then. But does that mean that that room is only going to be used for 2 periods a day, 1 for yearbook and 1 for newspaper, or however often they're used? I don't know.
It's 4.
4.
Yearbook, we have 2 sections of journalism, one of journalism 2, and then 1 section of yearbook. So 4 of the 7 hours they'll be used.
Would the kids be able to go in there quietly, like if they had a pre-period and work?
Not if it's not supervised, no.
Well, that's what I'm saying, so, but let's say it's not their time to go in there, you know, it's not
If
their
one of
class
the
period,
other
they had-
teachers was in there.
Right, that's what I'm saying,
Oh,
so there'd be
sure.
like 4, okay,
Yeah.
because that was one concern I think we had is that
Yeah.
if they wanted to go in and work and no
As
one
long
was
as
in there.
there's a
As long as
computer
the class is
available.
going in.
Yeah, they would be share and share alike.
Okay,
Bear in mind that in our current classroom, the same situation exists.
right,
Because they're not in there for all, 7 periods, they're in there for 5 periods. And so when they're out, that door's locked. So those kids that would want to go in there in times that they're out can get in. So it's not a new issue, I think this will help.
And then, you know, that set of classrooms is a little bit ADA compliant, challenging, right? I mean, because you'd have to use that. So originally, they were kind of these spare rooms. But when they get purposed for specific purposes, do we run into problems if, you know, you have a handicapped student who wants to get up there for a certain required class that's only offered there versus, you know, a math class where they could be put into? Because the original idea was, you know, it would be math and English, for example. And so, you know, if you were in a wheelchair, you would just be assigned to a different math class in a different part of the school.
Right, and that's still part of the plan. We do have a chair lift that goes up to that section. Okay, it's in the old choir stair set. So they can get up through that door and into anywhere in there. So it will be ADA accessible. It's limited in that you couldn't move a lot of people quickly.
Right. But, so we're just looking at 1 for.
Yeah.
All right, very good, thanks.
all right. Did we have curriculum met?
Yes, we met, and Mrs. Stevens presented a comprehensive coverage of all the facets of our district professional development 5-year sequential plan. She talked a lot about it before, but this time she brought Becky Drum and the English chair Jennifer Reiser and math teacher Jeff Little, who are all leaders in various aspects of this program. And they were able to lend details to us about their perspective and their part in it, which extended it nicely, I thought, because they've been there. And I also talked to Karen just a little bit this evening, and she was talking about how they just recently looked at it again and had meetings and are always evaluating it with the teachers and seeing if there are changes to be made, which is always a good idea. The covers of the meetings covered from large groups to small groups to one-on-one when necessary. So it's very comprehensive in the way it addresses the students, the teachers' needs. And certainly, the teachers constantly improving strategies and skills are a vital part of the level of our students' academic performance. Because as the teachers go and the quality of teaching goes to quality of learning. We did have a printout that Mrs. Stevens gave us, and I asked her tonight if she had any extra copies because it really was very thorough and very informative. And she said she could make some for any board members who weren't there. Plus, you could read the minutes of the meeting too and get information that I don't want to cover here because you have copies of it. But it was just really a very broad, comprehensive meeting, and we took a lot of time in it to ask questions and for clarification and more information.
And excuse me, as a visitor to that meeting, I was extremely impressed by the way the entire system for the teacher training is put together. So I think you did an incredible job. Thank you.
All right, Karen, is there a chance you could email that to the PowerPoint?
Yeah, I sent it to Kyle, but he didn't send it out.
Thank you.
I think those are the only two meetings that we need to. Committee reports, nothing else? All right. Number 6, discussion and information items. 6.1, resignation of Kelly DeChaney, Township Special Education Secretary.
You can see the resignation in there. She took a position that she was pretty excited about. I think it had to do with her former employer, and they had changed some things, and so she's going back to where she worked before.
Although we approve, or at least are informed about resignation, since it's a special ed district, do they actually do the hiring then through their meeting?
Well, we do the hiring here, and we'll, because we're the hiring agent.
I mean,
for
the recommendation and all that part comes from special ed to us as the oversight.
Annette Gresham did the work on that. They reviewed all the applicants and found the one that they felt best suited their needs. Sorry, Laura's stuff.
And then the superintendents, in a way, serve also as an oversight group together because they're all part of the services.
Yeah, and something that's that specific to that administrator's needs, the other superintendents aren't going to get too much in the way of that. They pretty much expect her to work with me on it and we move forward so that I can get it to the board for hiring.
It's a little different working relationship we have with all the other aspects are covered.
Yes, yes. When it comes to hiring social workers and psychologists and those that are direct service to students within the districts, then you have a lot more district participation. But being that this is truly a township need and that particular person is going to be most directly within that, from time to time answer questions from district employees, and that is the lead.
I assume that's probably.
6.2, public hearing to transfer funds.
Yeah, this is just kind of information. Next month, we'll have a public hearing as part of what we have budgeted for is to transfer the funds from the O&M fund to the capital project so we can finish off paying off the rest of the project.
6.3, project update.
Well, we talked about a lot of that just now with the facility committee. So that was kind of the big ticket item that we discussed in the facility committee meeting. Other things that are sitting out there, they're moving forward now on hopefully soon demolishing the old section that walled off the old transformer. So they're going to take that out and then try to get that final paneling up and try to get some other work. I sent an email out this in the weekend update that talked about the final plantings. There's a recommendation out there to kind of hold off until spring on some of those plantings. I think that's a wise idea, especially if we're going to ask them to warranty that. We don't want to put something in the ground that 2 months from now faces a winter like last winter and we find out is dead. by spring. So I think we'll probably hold off on that. There was a question about OCP insurance for some of the, which was more of a legal question. I ran that by Jay. He recommends that they do go out, if that policy is lapsed for them, that they do go out and purchase that policy. So I went ahead and sent Brian a letter just based on an email stating, hey, got a response from Jay. We do need those companies to make sure that they have that updated insurance policy in case anything happens. So that'll be a little extra cost because the project has gone a little further into the year than we expected with the renovation changes and some other things. The only other thing that is sitting out there, I don't think we hit it, because we talked about the 3 big ticket items, so.
Move along. You coming? All right, 6.4, senior lot site work.
Yeah, this is, I sent the board in the Friday letter information on this. I just got some quotes back on trying to replace that strip that used to be a grass strip, but because of all the, it becomes a convenient parking spot. Something that we probably need to do anyway, and then when we do our next round of oil and chip, it'll have a base that will be able to hold that and should last. If we ever look at, from a facility standpoint, of black topping those parking lots, having that extra base in that area would be good. And so Tazewell County Asphalt is looking at taking out 8 inches of depth and putting in, recycled base material, probably just ground up blacktop in that space. What I would be looking at is not doing the asphalt at this time, just kind of living with it, with going the cheaper option, and maybe fold that into a oil and chip, bid in the next year or 2 years. But hopefully, when the project's done, we don't have people parking along that space there as much. But then in the senior lot, staff lot, right at the turnaround point, there's just a lot of spider cracking and pothole that if we wait until winter, it's going to become more of an obstacle. So we can move forward with this. I can give Tazewell County a call. It's probably not the cheapest that we could get if we had done this work more in the summer, given the time frame. Things are kind of closing up shop as far as road work goes, and so. But it's something that we really need to do to address that before those water spots end up freezing. We have a lot of students and staff that walk that area, so.
It's hard to believe that it's been, almost 5 years since we chipped that senior lot.
Mm-hmm.
Before we did that, remember, it was a mud bowl.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it Dust Bowl? Right.
Yeah.
So in Tazewell County did that work, and so it's held up quite well.
Yeah. So,
Well, the construction hasn't helped. I mean, once we can get where people can pull around,
Right,
during the day,
right.
and don't have to park there.
And it'll be nice when we get to the point of actually doing an overlay on that. I would recommend that we take it all the way up to the sidewalk. It just, looks better.
All right, 6.5, the band audiovisual needs.
okay, and we said we'd put this on here. And I asked Mrs. Davis if she could kind of help walk us through what all is in this proposal. We talked about it briefly at facilities, but we kind of felt like everybody ought to hear it because it's got a sizable price tag, but it's all stuff that we need. And if you remember, we did pull this section out of the original project and said we would take care of it ourselves because we wanted to integrate it with our systems, our network, and our technology that we understand. So I think we're looking at one point we were talking about some flat panel TVs, but what we found out in that room is it's too big. Even the largest TV from across the room, you can't read it. So in order for us to do this, we need to go to a projector setup. And then there was a sound system which partially versed on. I think it is both, works both as a recording system and as a playback system so that they can hear. So you can see the bid on here for it. So, questions?
And just one thing to add, it is all a system that is controlled by one main system, controls everything. It'll be on a mobile cart for him so he can move it around the room as different setups in the band room. So that was kind of one of the concerns is if we need to break down into smaller parts, he can still get around the room with whatever controls there are. So that's a little bit of where the price tag comes in, making it mobile for such a big place or big room.
Was that something that we anticipated we were going to need, or once they got in there, they decided this is something they needed?
No, that was, he kind of mentioned, it was originally going to be part of the whole, and then he pulled it out for us to do. Yeah, so we knew all along. We actually did it over the summer, but the plans we went off of didn't show all those sound panels. So the original plan we had to scrap because we couldn't put things over the top of those sound panels. So that was kind of part of the delay on it, is seeing exactly what was on the walls to know what we could put in there.
So yes, we did expect.
Right, it's not like.
Right, yes, it was.
All right.
There, and the music boosters, the band boosters did make a nice contribution towards that system because they knew that this was going to evolve. We just didn't know what shape it was going to take. And so they donated $10,000 towards that and an additional $5,000 towards the audio system that we installed in the press box. And so Mr. Tallman is very flexible. He's like, he just really wants to make sure that whatever decision we make is the best decision, and time wasn't as critical for him. He is just excellent to work with. You're trying to move into a new facility.
Sounds like maybe it was better we waited till we saw what it was going to be laid out like.
Right.
And it's, we picked a system that can grow, like if they need to add mics at some point or another receiver, it has those capabilities to grow.
And the course room they're already good to go?
Yes.
So the proposal, would that have the fees or the donations in, or is that the section is just what we?
That's just the total cost.
Okay.
So the cost to the district would be less than $10,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, 6.6, Joint Annual Conference 2019.
You know it's coming up, so if you have any questions, please let us know. You're going to get different emails from Debbie talking about things that are going on that you need to be aware of. We'll talk about reservations, so you know where you're staying and how to get into the hotel and what to do after that. And you know, there are a lot of good conferences during that weekend, and we've brought things back from that over the years. So I'm glad that we have 6 going this year. I think it'll be something worthwhile. So we'll be in touch. If you have any questions, though, please fire away. I think I secured Friday nights. That's kind of nice. So.
All right.
I promise not to blow up anything this year.
But
I did last year.
Didn't cost the district any money though, just.
Yeah, no.
Wasn't that bad.
Just be careful what you blow on it.
An entire room.
Okay. On to 6.7, the Township Athletic Meeting, October 23rd, 2019.
So here we are. We finally got everything together, piled together, and Brian Tibbs and I have been working together to try to get these things finalized. So now you have a series of, and I sent them out to everybody. Hopefully you had a chance to kind of look through it. There are parent contracts, there are student contracts, there are coaching, middle school, high school, and youth coaching contracts, along with administrative contracts. The whole concept behind this being township-wide athletics and looking at it and trying to build some consistency into what we see from the ground floor up. That includes little programs, I don't know, 5U soccer, whatever it might be, as long as it's tied to this programming. It's trying to build a culture around athletics that's more positive, more supportive, and we start to see the benefits of the athletics, but not necessarily overplay the other end of it, because sometimes it can be carried a little too far. That meeting will be on the 23rd. What I'm trying to do is remember who were the 2 working board members. There were a number of board members that came to the initial meeting, but only 2 that were working board members, and there's a reason for that, because there are too many organizations involved. We're also talking about the other school districts. We're talking about the park district. It would be almost impossible to put together a giant joint meeting like that. It would be just really messy and cumbersome. So if we keep it below OMA standards, we can meet. It's not that it's not open, that people can't walk in and hear what's going on. It's more along the lines of, we have to be cautious in our walk to make sure we're staying within what this board's expected to do. And I think that the 2 that were working members, if I remember correctly, and this is why part of the reason I put this on here, were Mrs. Essig and Mrs. Ward.
I believe
I was.
You came and,
I was
you
at
came
it.
also.
I was at it, but I don't think I was on it.
Yeah, I think there were a number that came to hear the speaker that,
Bob Wilson.
yeah.
Is he coming back to conduct this, or this is going to be put out by the park
This
district?
is just, now it's just taking all that material and putting it into something which you use. Because what he initially gave us was about 50 pages deep, and what we've learned is nobody's going to read that. So,
Well, and quite frankly, many organizations that are not part of the Park District, and, well, I guess actually the one I participate is part of the Peoria Park District, they already have these types of documents in place, so it's almost becoming a standard for working with students and athletes and parents and administration within the Park District.
I think a lot of groups are doing that individually, but from what I'm hearing, we might be the first community to do it across the board with the same contracts. I think what you have is the different organizations produce their own contracts. And this is trying to make it more.
Well, and that'd be easier,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it works well with the hockey families for high schools, I do know that, so.
Sure.
It goes with Decatur and Springfield and Peoria and us. So that's one I'm familiar with,
So by the time
it's
they
not
get to
new
us,
me.
hopefully they've got it all.
Right. And that's kind of the thought behind it, is if we're all pushing in the same direction, we're going to be much more effective across the board. So,
Is this kind of an umbrella over our policies that are in place, athletic policies?
yeah, I think it falls in line with them. I mean, the expectations that are in here are based on a series of we believe statements. So the belief statements, the core values that they guide your policy.
Philosophy.
Yeah, so this is more the philosophical document that goes along with the general policies. And we can look at our athletic policies and make sure that they jive pretty directly, which we will do, because it'll become part of the athletic policy handbooks for both coaches and players. That won't be too difficult to do. The actual, once, if you read through that, it's not that it's a specific, policy sometimes drives some of the nitty gritty. I don't know that this gets that deep. That's where I'm trying to go with. I'm trying to explain it because it's more of a broad-based concept. It's not tightened in like a policy might be.
So I thought more an umbrella.
Yes.
And then policies fall under the umbrella.
Yes.
Any other comments? What time is that meeting?
I think we had it for 7?
At 5:1?
6? 6? 6.
And it's at 5:1.
It's at 5:1.
All right.
And it's okay if board members come as part of the audience.
All right. Anything else? 6.8, any other discussion?
Ms. Essig, I do have another. Okay, I'll try to be brief, try to keep it underneath 2 minutes, but during homecoming week, I am also wear another hat. I'm the tour guide for all the classes that want to come back and do a reunion. And so one class in particular class of 1964. They were part of the group this year celebrating their 55th class reunion. And so they wanted to extend this gift to our board and our administration. Would you make sure that and so I always learn a lot of interesting stories on these reunions. Really, I've got them on my phone. A lot of really interesting stories. And we think our kids are tough today. No comparison. So, the class of 64, apparently there was a wood balance beam somewhere in the school. And then it got stored away and sat down in a closet in the boiler room for years and years and years, and the administration somewhere in the 90s decided to clean house. Well, we had an employee here by the last name of Herman, and he took it home, threw it in his garage, and used it as a device to pull engines out of cars. You know, it's the big beam. And so Stan Herman rescued this beam upon the sale of his brother's house, and decided to use the wood in the making of these pens. And so I will tell you this, the class of 64 is an outstanding group. Bob Young is the president. Their class reunions are probably the largest attended out of all the ones that I've done here as far as showing up. My wife and I, 5 years ago, got invited to their class reunion. It's quite the experience, but I could not believe how many people were in attendance. And so Laura Sweetland, retired teacher here, Mandy, you probably remember Laura. She was in that class, and she wanted to make sure that we gave that, and that story was shared about WCHS artifacts being extended on. So 55 plus years after the fact.
One other is we did have the dedication for the new Vanderbilt room. I think that was really well attended. And I meant to bring it. I got a note from the Whitaker family. They're really, really grateful and really appreciative that we honored their aunt. So I thought that was nice.
Well, they sent us a big bouquet of flowers. So.
Yeah, I think they're really good. Really sweet.
There was a nice article in the newspaper.
Yes,
for
it
people to
was.
that also. I think that was my Steve's done.
All right, anything else? Okay, on to the consent agenda. Can we just read through that? Our consent agenda 7.1, 7.11, executive session, meeting minutes, August 19th, 2019. 7.12, regular board meeting minutes, September 9th, 2019. 7.13, executive session meeting minutes, September 9th, 2019. 7.14, special board meeting minutes, September 17th, 2019. 7.15, executive session meeting minutes, September 17th, 2019. 7.16, curriculum meeting minutes, October 4th, 2019. 7.17, facility committee meeting minutes, October 9th, 2019. 7.18, special board meeting minutes, October 9th, 2019. And 7.19, executive session meeting minutes, October 9th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. Do we have a roll call?
More.
Oh, I'm sorry.
7.2 and 7.3.
That wasn't enough. All right, I'm sorry. 7.2, the bills. 7.3, accept the FY19 audit report. Now, can I have a motion?
So moved.
All right. Sorry.
Essig,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Ward. Yes. Knopfinger,
Yes.
Seaman. Yes. McNabb.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
All right. Passes. On to action item. Number 8, 8.1 personnel. We have, let's see, 8.11A, approve leave of absence for Jay Buffington, special ed aide. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Roll call.
Seaman. Yes. McNabb.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Essig,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Ward. Yes. Knopfinger.
Yes.
All right. 8.12, employment of certified personnel. 8.1.2A, approve employment of Cynthia Gasser as the homebound tutor. Have a motion?
Second.
And second, do we have any comment?
You see our information on that. We think she'll do a great job.
All right.
Essek?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Ward? Yes. Knopfinger?
Yes.
Seaman? Yes. McNutt?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
All right, 8.13, employment of non-certified personnel. 8.13A, approve employment of James Fry as the student supervisor. 8.1.3B, approve employment of Bethany Micklick as the Secretary Township Special Education Secretary. And 8.1.3C, approve employment of Amanda Peterson as a tutor. Do you have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion second, any comment?
So Mr. Fry has been involved in the music program for some time. He is now helping out as a student supervisor as well. I'm very grateful. It means we now have another crossing guard over by the tennis courts. So that's good. Bethany Micklick is the township secretary who is replacing the resignation we saw up above in the information item. And she'll also do a great job. And Amanda Peterson, who is one of our assistant swim coaches, is serving as an ELL teacher for us at this point also. So
Is that a new position?
it is not a new position, but it's been very, very difficult to fill.
All right, any other comments? All right, roll call?
McNutt?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Essek?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Ward? Yes. Knopfinger?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes. All right. 8.1.4, 8.1.4A, approve employment of Carol Wilson as a costumer.
Oh, you're so lucky.
So we have a motion?
Second.
Any comments?
Sure. Mrs. Wilson just retired and has done a phenomenal job for us for years and is very gifted in the art of sewing and will make a great costumer. So I know everybody's looking forward to it.
All right, roll call?
Ward? Yes. Knopfinger?
Yes.
Seaman?
Yes.
McNutt?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Essek?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. 8.1.5, retirement request. 8.1.5A, approve retirement request from J. Alexander Food Service Worker. And 8.1.5B, approve retirement request for M. Armstrong as head cook. Do you have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion second, any comment?
We always hate to see them go, but we do understand. You know, they've done a great job in our food service area for a while, so.
Roll call?
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Seaman? Yes. McNutt?
Yes.
Butler?
Yes.
Essek?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Ward? Yes.
Motion passes. 8.2, approve overnight band trips. 8.2.1, approve overnight by-state honor band trip to SIUE, January 17th to the 19th, 2020. And 8.2.2, approve overnight honor band trip to WIU, February 20th through the 22nd of 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion second. Any comments on that?
These are annual trips, and we usually have pretty good involvement in this, our music programs. Fairly sizable, and we have a lot of good musicians in it, so. We send a number of kids.
That's it. I think I saw the list. It looks like we got quite a few kids going, so that's impressive.
So when they go on these trips, are they taken by bus or?
It depends on numbers.
Okay.
Some of the trips that are a little smaller, that have smaller groups, might go in one of our Suburbans. Other trips that are a little bigger might take an activity bus, or if we needed a full-size bus.
And then there'd be chaperones with us and teachers.
Any other questions? Comments? All right, roll call, please.
Fisher?
Yes.
Ward?
Yes.
Knopfinger?
Yes.
Seaman? Yes. McNutt?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. All right, 8.3, approve Allen Transportation Service contract for 2021 and 22. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. Comments? No comments? And roll call?
Butler.
Yes.
Essing.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Ward. Yes. Cottsinger.
Yes.
Seaman. Yes. Smith.
Yes.
All right, and number 9, executive session. Do I have a motion? 9.1.5 ILCS 122 C9 for student disciplinary cases. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
So moved. Second.
Roll call?
McNabb.
Yes.
Butler.
Yes.
Essing.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Ward. Yes. Cottsinger.
Yes.
Yes.
Power.
And there's not.
There is an action item after. Yes.
No, that's the town.